Let's talk about art appreciation with young children. Okay, so what we want to do as part of our talking about art and creativity with young children is help them appreciate art. That means not just making it, but learning about art that's already in existence, what it's for, why we do it, where it came from, what it means, all of those things. And they fit within the Illinois Early Learning and Development Standards for young children. So I'm going to teach you how to do that. One thing that we want to do when we have children who are creating art is to respond to it by being positive and accepting and congratulating them on what they're doing. So I'm going to show you some ways that at my previous school, we responded to their art and also taught them about actual artists and real art out in real life. Not that what kids do isn't real art, it is real art, but famous artists. So to respond to children's art, we want to ask open-ended questions. We talked about that before. How did you do this? Why did you decide to use these colors? What happened when you mixed the colors together? How did it feel when you put your fingers in the paint? What kind of music were you listening to when you made this, right? Can you tell me about your painting? Instead of, oh, what did you paint? Can you tell me about your painting? Is a way of encouraging language more than just, what is it? What part did you like best? How did you choose the colors? How did the paint feel? What shapes did you make? What happened when you mixed the colors? These are all open-ended questions that help children think about what they've made and help them develop the language to describe it and show them that you're interested in what they're doing. Other ways to respond to children's art are to create displays of children's art. Any classroom should have lots of examples of art that children have done all over the place. Hang it up in your classroom, make a gallery door. We all often don't think of doors as spaces to display things. Stick a sheet of paper on there and then just put, art all over it. Mat or frame the art. What you see here is art that was created by, these are toddlers, older toddlers. And it's based on this piece by Henri Matisse, which is a collage. And they matted it and then they actually laminated them and hung them up. Feature artists on a bulletin board. So set aside a small bulletin board in your classroom, and each month or each week or every couple of days have a different artist there, whether it's an actual artist that people know about, or maybe it's your artist of the week from your classroom. Put a picture of the kid up there and a bunch of examples of his or her work. Hang art at children's level so they can actually see it and touch it and engage with it. Put pictures of the children who created or as they're creating the art and their names with the art. I'll show you some pictures of that. And last but not least, have an art show. So this was a big thing that our school did. Every year we had an art show and invited the parents to come. And I'm going to show you some of the works that we did. So each year, the teachers would choose an artist or two that they were going, or a piece of art by an artist that they were going to try to do a version of with the children in their classroom. Some of the things we saw over the years were portraits where children would draw pictures of each other based on the Mona Lisa, right? Or portraits by Pablo Picasso. Picasso's fun because of all the colors, and you can talk about perspective. You can talk about how, the eyes are in funny places and the mouth is kind of funny. And then you can have kids make collages with different shapes, like a Picasso collage or Picasso painting. We did a really cool thing. Andy Warhol is a pop artist. And one of the things that he did was he took duplicates of a portrait of Marilyn Monroe and colored it in different ways. Well, what we did is, I can't go back. We made photocopies of black and white photocopies of kids' faces, and then they got to color on them with markers inspired by Andy Warhol. And you can do it, a bunch of different ways. The kids really liked that. Still life with apples. So what is a thing here that you can talk about? You can talk about all the shapes. One of the things that we had is we had laminated copies of this, and kids could just draw on it with dry erase markers. They could circle shapes. They could, talk about colors, that kind of thing. Grandma Moses did what we called story pictures. So this is obviously, there's a lot happening here. This is a great thing to hold up in front of your class and say, what is happening here? Can you tell me about all of this? Or sit down with one or two kids. Let's count all the people. What are all the what are all the animals that you see? What do you think is happening? What happened after this picture, after she painted this picture? Okay. Same thing with this one. There's a whole lot of stuff going on that you can talk about. And then you can have children do pictures inspired by Grandma Moses. Draw a picture of a family picnic, or draw a picture of your house with all your family. Like I said before, Henri Matisse, this is a collage. And one of the things that's interesting about it is that it's called the snail. So we ask kids if they can see a snail there. Why do we think he called it the snail? Let's talk about all these different colors and shapes. Jackson Pollock, you might know, is an action painter, which means he dripped and threw paint on a canvas. And I'll show you in a little bit about an example of kids doing that. Here's Jackson Pollock. You can see he's standing on the canvas. He's got a can of paint and he's just flinging paint with his paintbrush. This is something we actually did with our kids, and I'll show you that. This is George Seurat, and this is another great story painting. And the story behind this one is it's pointillism, so it's all done with little dots. So then we could do dot paintings. There was an example back before that of that. This is Starry Night by Vincent van Gogh. Another one that's really good for kids to look at, to think about, to talk about, see all the motion in this picture. You can just do this one with blue paper and chalk, and just draw squiggles all over it and be inspired by Starry Night. This is Vasily Kandinsky. We did a really cool one with this where they cut out all different circles with felt. The teacher made all kinds of different colored sizes and circles of felt. And then each kid got to put together their own square, and then they put it all together. And it was very cool. This is Jazz by Pete Mondrian. He was an abstract artist. I mean, come on, this is all about shapes and colors. I'll show you a version of that. This is a sculpture by Frank Stella. Our babies did a version of this. They just took a paper plate and some toilet paper tubes and some cray paper, and they glued it all together. They sat in the high chair and put the paper plate down, and then the teachers just helped them pick things to put on there. The Kiss by Gustav Klimt. This one's fun because it's sparkly paint, and because you can do this one really well with like sponge painting. Cut up some sponges in rectangles and stamp them on, and then use gold paint to draw around it. A lot of ways to do that in a classroom. So these are some paintings that our children created that were based on actual, real, well-known artists. This is The Bridge at Giverny by Claude Monet. So this is a painting. He's an impressionist. And you can see there's the bridge, and you can see the colors, blues and greens and purples. So what they did was the teachers taped off the bridge with some painter's tape on a piece of cardstock. And then they put it in a Ziploc bag, and they squirted some paint in there, some green, purple, and blue paint, and then just let the kids mush around with their hands. They didn't even get dirty. Like right? They were just mushing it around in the Ziploc bag. They got it out, and that was their Bridge Giverny. See, you can see up close. So it doesn't have to look exactly like the artist that inspired it, but you can see totally what the inspiration was. This is an artist called Jim Dine, and he does heart things. This is also, these are young toddlers, and you can see that the teachers took pictures while the kids were doing the art. They were in the high chair, and what they did was they took a piece of contact paper and put it sticky side up, and then gave the kids yarn scraps, and they just put it on there, and then they stuck it on a piece of cardstock. So there you go. I mean, that's kind of cool, right? These are some jazz pictures created by the toddlers that were inspired by Pete Mondrian again. Again, this is a tape release one, so they just put tape at angles across the paper and then let kids go crazy with finger paint. Took off the tape, and there you go. This is a big one that our older preschoolers did, where the teachers taped off just a big sheet of paper with black tape and let the kids color in the shapes. And then this was done by 3-year-olds. It's a mobile, which is inspired by Pete Mondrian jazz. They just glued shapes together and strung it from yarn. Another thing that we did was we had each classroom would pick a book, an illustrated book that they would make a work that was inspired by. So this is The Little Cloud by Eric Carle. And these are toddlers again. What they did was they crumpled up tinfoil and spread it out and glued it, and then put different pieces of tissue paper on to make clouds. These were, this is a good book for learning about color mixing. The mice step in different kinds of paint and the color mixes together. So these kids, these were 3-year-olds, were learning about how colors mix together. So they made color mixing paintings using red, yellow, and blue to see what happened. They also made red, yellow, and blue frosting and then mixed it together to see what would happen. It turned gray. This is a painting by Wassily Kandinsky again, and this is watercolors that some 3-year-olds did based on that. And so what they did was they took Sharpies and they drew lines, and then they watercolored around it. Like, this kid totally gets it. This is a book called I Ain't Gonna Paint No More, where a kid gets covered in paint. So the preschoolers put paint on their arms and made impressions on the paper and then painted it different colors. Another one of the Mondrian group projects. This is inspired by The Very Hungry Caterpillar, inspired by Eric Carle. This is Babies. And basically what they did was they gave them a piece of paper with the letter of their name, and they put glitter paint and they just rubbed it all over the place. It's just really the colors are inspired by Eric Carle there. And as you can see, we had pictures of them doing the work too, which is cool. Some of them were in high chairs, some of them were down on the floor. This is, Dale Chihuly is a master glass blower who's famous for making these kind of like shells, and for making installations, like ceiling installations. So what we did was they took coffee filters and they colored them with markers and then dipped them in liquid starch, which stiffens them up. And then we had some old something that was broken that we took the wire frame out of, and we stuck them all on the wire frame. So this is inspired by Dale Chihuly's blown glass art. That was a really fun project. These elephants were inspired by Elmer by David McKee. This was little kids, again, toddlers, and they just made outlines of the elephant and then took some colored squares and glued them on. Wayne Thiebaud is a fun artist for kids to learn about. He does a lot of cakes and ice cream and stuff like that. And so these were preschoolers that did their best sort of impressions of ice cream using cutout paper and also watercolors. We made an easel painting quilt collage. So what we did here was we just gathered up a whole bunch of easel paintings that kids had done, cut them up into pieces, and then decoupaged them on a piece of canvas. And that turned out really cool. And then this was the action painting that we did, inspired by Jackson Pollock, who I talked about before, the one that flung paint at the canvas. We spread out a piece of canvas, which we just got at the hardware store. It's a drop cloth. And then we gave the kids paint and brushes and let them go crazy. So there's Jackson Pollock doing what he does. And we showed them a little video of him at work. And then we literally just let them go. These are some older toddlers, younger toddlers, actually. One thing that I would suggest is you need to put plastic wrap on the walls around because the paint gets flung. And some kids were super into it and some kids were not interested in doing it at all, which is the way it happens with all kinds of art projects, or any projects for that matter. And some kids got it all over themselves, but they all had a great time. So those are some great ways to learn about artists and incorporate work from real artists into your classroom.